The first edition of Frontier Opening Bell started for the month of November. Welcome my panelists today. It's good to see everyone starting the new month. Chima Ukadike, who is the consumer goods analyst at Vetiva Capital Management. Good morning. Hope you had a nice weekend.
Good morning, Bassel. Yes, I did.
Thank you. It's good to see you again on the show. And Alice Sega, it's good to also see you back on the program from Dubai.
Good morning.
From Sega Associates. Thank you so much. Ali covers risk and governance issues around the North African region. And we just go to North Africa region. But welcome everyone to November. Let's check through the markets that will cover the five of the markets on the continent: Egypt, Kenya, South Africa in negative 33 as we finished off last week. And of course, to start, and then Nigeria's market, a weekly gain 6.39%, one of the strongest so far in the new year, bringing the country's year to date to the doorstep of about 15%. Ivory Coast 2.58%, a very strong gain for the Ivorian market. I'm sure Chima will be taking us to some of the earnings that we saw within the Nigeria space. Third quarter earnings seem to be a very strong push for the Nigerian marketplace. Kutude Sulaiman is also joining us on the show this morning from Greenwich Merchant Bank. Good morning, Kutude. Thank you so much. Hope you had a very great weekend. Let's go to North Africa very quickly. I'm sure Ali is waiting with Libya oil production now about 800,000 barrels per day. 1 million barrels per day is not far from where we are right now. Morocco, the World Bank is asking this North African big economy to invest very strongly in human capital, which the World Bank says should help the country speed up its economic recovery. And First Abu Dhabi Bank has resumed talks to buy the Bank Audi in Egypt. And Tamia is issuing is doing a second issue of securitization, but that will be early in 2021. Ali Sega.
Yes, so I will just focus a little bit on Libya, because now the Libya situation is a little bit more stable. It's a very good news for all, we can say, North African country, because as you know, Libya used to hire a lot of Egyptians and Tunisians. So to see that the stabilization of Libya is going on is really good. So 800,000 barrels per day is quite good. I think they want to reach 1 million barrels in the coming weeks. So it's quite good for the economy of the country and the economy of the whole region. After we'll come back on one interesting fact on First Abu Dhabi Bank wanted to buy a Lebanese bank, so Audi Bank. So Audi Bank, as you know, is a Lebanese bank, and Lebanon is struggling to get dollars. So it's quite a good deal for Audi to sell the bank in US dollar, because like this they will earn a little bit more dollars that they need in their home country in Lebanon. And it's really interesting to see that all these Gulf banks are investing a lot in Egypt. So we will have First Abu Dhabi Bank. So from Abu Dhabi, we have already Emirates NBD. We have Qatar National Bank. They are all in Egypt. So all major, we can say, Gulf banks are now in Egypt. So it's quite interesting. And the last interesting fact is on Morocco and human capital. I think it's quite obvious for all African countries that they need to, we can say, to be more focused on their human capital development, because all these African countries, they need, this is one of their resources, this is the human capital. And we see that it has been, we can say, neglected for a long time, and they need to focus more and more on this. So it's quite interesting to see that World Bank in 2020, they finally say, yes, Morocco, you need to focus more on your human capital.
Yes, we'll touch on a few, your views on a few other points. But again, for human capital, the World Bank made that a very big headline over the last 2 years. They set up a new index entirely different from the previous one that captures how nationals or sovereigns are investing in human capital, having seen that GDP numbers are not enough to show an inclusive growth for everyone. So the need to have human capital, not just human development index, which was the HDI, but to have a new HCI, which was the human capital index, which shows how much you're really investing in your people, in women, in children, in youth, in education, and things of that nature, making a very important part of the growth that we should be seeing around the world. A very important point you raised there again on that, not just for Morocco, but for entire Africa, sub-Saharan North Africa as well. Thank you, Ali. Let's go to the Nigerian and West Africa, and Nigeria is one big story. Again, we're not ignoring the big elections in Ivory Coast, which is a big story right now. The elections were held over the weekend. President Alassane Ouattara, according to votes being counted, is taking an early lead. The opposition, according to Bloomberg this morning, are calling for a transition government that will take over the reins of administration from Alassane Ouattara into another election. Is going to be a little bit, we don't know how this will play out, but right now, the main opposition parties in Ivory Coast are contesting the early lead that the incumbent president Alassane Ouattara is taking. Is looking very similar to what we saw towards the end of last week as far as Tanzania elections concerned. But the stock market in the BRVM went up last week. I'm sure you saw that earlier. Nigeria goes today a full reopening from Lagos to other parts of the country. Banks, schools are back in full business. And this week we're having the FMDQ Gold Awards for 2020 on Thursday. The Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers annual conference will be starting from tomorrow to the rest of the week. In the banking sector, Jaiz Bank, which is Nigeria's only listed non-interest bank, clarified the selection of a new CEO and denied some media reports that says there were rifts or problems on the board of the bank. Seplat's 9-month story earnings was a big story last week, but we saw Botswana or so from the industrial sector, Seplat in the oil and gas, Nestle from the consumer goods space. In BRVM, suspension of Oragroup share. This is being pursued again. We issue with the regulatory authorities from the Ivorian market. The Bank of Africa in Niger Republic reported net income 36%. Banks seem to be having a very some of the good numbers across sub-Saharan Africa to 4.5 billion CFA in third quarter. Let's start with Chima Okadike very quickly with the consumer goods and the outlook that we're seeing from some of the numbers for the third quarter.
Yes, so those earnings, we saw them last week, like you said, from flour mills, Nigerian Breweries, Nestle, Minerals the week before. There was also some other companies from some other sectors, like we saw. And then we can see how investors are reacting positively to it. We can see that consumer goods sector in the past week gained about 6%, about 12% for that week, bringing the month-to-date performance to about 20%. Looking individually at the results, although for some of them they have performed worse than their previous year comparisons, we can see that for NB, for example, although it was able to post about 6 billion naira in profit, is way less than the 12 billion naira it was able to post for its 9-month 19 period. So when you look at it in terms of the previous year performance, it's quite poor. However, when you take into consideration all that has happened in this year, looking at almost the end of Q1, the whole of Q2, where they were only able to recognize about 84 million naira profit as a result of very weak demands as people went into lockdown and people were not demanding as much alcohol and malt and what have you. So when you look at it in terms of that, it would look like there has been a rebound for Q3, bringing 9 months performance to, I think, a suitable high. And our outlook for Q4 seems very positive because, like you said, the first story is that Lagos is set to reopen fully, schools, banks, and what have you. So the effect of these reopenings will definitely be felt in several of our consumer goods companies. We'll see a lot of social activities resuming, and we'll see this affect their results, both top line and bottom line. For NB, one good thing for NB is that they've tried to cut costs successfully. And when we look at their distribution cost components of their OPEX, we can see that has reduced considerably over the past 1 year. So we are quite optimistic about NB, especially, well, given where it has come from. We're also optimistic for Nestle, even though when we look at their revenue performance, they seem to be doing a lot worse than the previous year in terms of food. But for their beverage segment, they're doing a lot better. Beverage has grown about 12% between last year and this year, and we had expected for their food segment to do a lot better, given the problems with Unilever's law in the beginning of this year. But with that gone, I think that as Unilever continues to strengthen its market share, as it comes back into the market with its law, we don't expect to see so much a very good performance from Nestle's food. However, we expect to see the beverage segment supporting revenue in this coming last quarter, and so we still have an optimistic view on Nestle as well. For flour mills as well, flour mill was very impressive. We saw that it's posted double-digit growth, high double-digit growth across its food, sugar, agro-ally. I think it posted about 60%, above 60% year-on-year growth in its agro-allied business, and posted about 40% in its food and sugar businesses respectively. So flour mills is one stock that we have continued to watch as well. And when we look at the investors' reaction to these stocks on the exchange, we see that they mirror our sentiments as well. We see that flour mills has been gaining consistently since they released their results. Nestle as well gained 10% in the last trading session. NB as well. We should see some positive sentiment on that stock as well. So overall, we are seeing positive sentiment across consumer goods sector.
Thank you. Suleiman, let me ask you, Nigeria's PMI, which was reported for October, was still around 49, around 49.4, better than 46.9 in September. Then we're seeing these numbers for third quarter from some of these listed bellwethers in industrial, both in industrial goods and consumer goods. So if you look at the PMI and all that, now we're reopening the big economies back, Lagos, Ogun, and elsewhere. Do you think this full reopening from the lockdowns could help stimulate industrial manufacturing, output, GDP, and all of that for the final quarter that we're entering the second day?
Yes, I mean, it's a great pointer to economic development generally. But the challenge here is that we've lost a lot of time. We just have 2 months going into the full year. How much more can we do? And the steam is currently low. Businesses, after emerging from COVID, had to go down with the NSAS protest again. And we are just reopening at the 2nd of November. How much more at this time businesses are winding up for the year? They are closing their books. Manufacturing firms are washing their...
You can't wind up for the year, Suleiman. You can't wind up for the now. Folks are just opening shop.
But generally, it's November.
It's a different year entirely. In fact, I think Ali will agree with me. If you have the virus lockdown, then you find the disaster, the destruction and disruption and all of that. You can close shop in November. You just got to go on all the way.
I mean, I would want to side with you on this, but I think the thing is there's little you can do from November to December. I know, yeah, you do some level of production, but it's not going to be as optimal as you would anticipate or you want. And I think we should be cautious with our optimism in opening the economy. If you recollect, during the first wave of COVID, we had about 2 months lag before we experienced our first case in Nigeria, and I think about in Africa as well. And we've seen countries across Europe, England, France, they're beginning to institute some sort of restrictions due to the spike in cases again. I think we should be cautious going into December. We're likely going to start seeing some spikes because the second wave we've been expecting is here. And if that comes, it means the year is not going to be so fruitful, and going into 2021 is going to be difficult as well. But generally, if we can maintain the steam, if we can keep pushing and see these companies turn up such results, I think it's positive for GDP, it's positive for PMI and the general economy. But I think we should remain cautious going forward. We should remain cautious.
I think we should remain cautious. I get your point there, because again, with logistics and flights and all of that in and out of Nigeria from Europe and elsewhere, inflow and outflows, I think is something we need to cautious optimism. I agree with you. I think I'll go with you on that course, because look at East Africa, where Kenya Airways has just suspended its initial full reopening today, return of full flights to New York in the US, and now pushing that into towards the end of the month, November the 29th. Technically, 1 month hiatus for that, because folks were canceling flights, as it were, and you're not going to put planes in the skies with half or empty seats, by the way. So it's not profitable. So Kenya Airways is pulling back on that. A whole lot about the airlines, even in Europe this morning, about what happens to all the airlines as well. I'm sure the Middle East folks also have their own concerns about flights in from Europe and out of the same region. But looking at East Africa and beyond the airlines and what the virus is, Coca-Cola in Kenya has unveiled an online home delivery service. Well, it's taking the product to the homes of the people if they can't go out because of the virus or whatever lockdown, or they're working from home. Well, you don't need to step out. Coca-Cola will reach you at home. Uganda's inflation for October studied at 4.5%. Core inflation rises 6.3%, just a notch or so from 6.2 in the previous month. And merge exchange in Seychelles Island is listing Upvest $2.5 million new shares. So when we look at the airlines, Ali Sega, we look at the airlines and the need for flights and what have you, and the virus, the concerns are getting much wider than expected towards the end of the year. Was this what was being talked about during the first wave?
Yes, in fact, it's quite, we can say, worrying in a part that all, we can say, air company are struggling a lot. So some of them are asking for government support, but it will not be enough because it's really a long time. I think from the first wave, we can say from March to now, it's already 9 months that they are struggling. So to restart, we can say, the flight, it will be also a challenge because people are not so, we can say, confident to take airlines, especially Europeans, to go on vacation, for example, for all North African countries in Morocco and Tunisia. First, it's not the season, so it means that the whole season is dead. So the whole 2020 season is dead, and perhaps it will restart in May or something like this. But even in May, it's not even sure. So it's really challenging for all these air companies to, you can say, to survive till the month of May. After, I know that, for example, in Middle East, they are pushing a lot to have tourists to come to the country, especially Dubai. But it's quite a challenge also because they don't want to have a second or third wave of coronavirus. Because if it happens, it will even be more difficult to sustain after this, in fact. So it's really a challenge. Either you open now or you open later. But more you open later, worse the situation of the airline company will be, in fact.
Interesting. Okay, let's touch on Southern Africa very quickly, where the budget last week is still being considered. One of the rating agencies believe that budget by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni may not really have all it takes to cut the ice for Africa's most industrialized economy. Anglo American came out and says we are now responsible. The CEO over the weekend said we're now responsible for the lead poisoning from one of the mines in Zambia. Everybody is claiming no responsibility, but that lead poisoning from one of the mines is very real. Botswana reporting rough diamond exports down 66% in third quarter. The rich, no one is really buying diamonds fast and furious as they used to. Again, with the second wave of virus lockdown in Europe, it's going to be a very hard time for Botswana in Southern Africa to continue to depend on diamond sales for the economy. Naspers, Prosos is a subsidiary buying about $5 billion of its own shares. Eskom, after keeping everyone waiting for 3 months, released its 2019-2020 report, 20.5 billion loss, and gave everyone a warning that will go as high as 26 billion rand in 2021 financial year. Cabinda Refinery, that's in Angola. Sonangol is putting 10%, which is the state-owned oil company. Gemcorp is putting 90%. The total cost about 920 million. US dollars. So, of course, then Comair, which is one of the troubled airlines, private airlines in South Africa, says it's been able to secure new debt and been able to defer interest payment to the banks, as the South African Airways itself is getting about 15 billion rand support from the government to bail out the airline. All that in the news this week. Let me just ask Chima about the current trading week as we step into November for the Nigerian market on the consumer goods side. We're still expecting some earnings, by the way, but in terms of your outlook for the month, what's your take at Vertiva?
Yes, you're right. For our coverage companies, at least we still expect one more company to release. We have seen like I said, we've seen the response of investors to the earnings that have been released so far. It has been very positive. Going forward, we still expect to see more positive results, and so we expect to see positive responses from investors on the stock exchange. We should say, however, that one of the downsides to our optimism, like you have said, we should all be cautiously optimistic. One of the downsides to expressed optimism is the time it will take for many of these companies or retail outlets to rebuild after the recent vandalisms that have taken place. We know that many consumer goods depend on many of these retail outlets for a large portion of their sales. So with how they have been affected, the time taking to rebuild their stores and get their trading activities back on track will also affect the earnings of some of these companies, but that will be for Q4. So we don't expect investors to put that into consideration at this time because everybody's still focused on the earnings release for Q3. So we expect that we'll still see more positive sentiment. We may see some profit taking depending on risk appetites of some investors, because the sector has really done a positive number. So we don't rule out the possibility of profit taking, but we still expect a lot of positive sentiment and bargain hunting for this week.
Okay, Akitile Suleiman, in terms of the big banks haven't reported outside Stanbic IBTC for third quarter, really UBA, Zenith, Access, GT Bank. What's your outlook on this big banks' earnings?
I mean, like we saw in the first half, we are still bullish on the banks. You see investors have been positioning for the past 2-3 months now, because the outlook for the bank is still positive. The banks have seen a way to move away from interest income to diversify their business to across the non-interest income. We've seen agency fee increase, we've seen non-interest income increase, and due to fees and commission and other income lines, and we expect that this will persist. And we've seen positive environment. Businesses are beginning to kick in. We've seen their loan books. They've been trying to grow their loan books cautiously, and we expect that this will persist, and this will bring some positivity to their numbers. So it's still bullish for us across the banking sector.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's leave it there for today. Thank you so much, Ali Sega in Dubai. It's good to have you on the program. Thank you so much, risk and governance experts for North Africa, Chima Okadike from Vertiva Capital in charge of consumer goods analysis, and of course, Akitile Suleiman from Greenwich Merchant Bank. Thank you so much. Have a great day. It's good to have you here. The first business day of November. See you tomorrow.